Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another instant reaction video from your old pal, the Volok. Now you might be saying to yourself, Volok, the Vols didn't play football today, it's their bye week. We've got Missouri next weekend. But the Vols did play basketball today against a very good nationally ranked Washington Huskies team. You might be confused because you didn't see it on your TV guide or whatever it is you use these days. But I assure you, it was on. You had to have ESPN Plus, which is kind of a racket in and of itself. You know, you pay for ESPN, the cable, and then you get the streaming on the ESPN3. But the ESPN Plus is money above and beyond all of that. So a lot of people across the area did not get to watch the Vols. Plus you throw in the fact that some fellow named Chris Gaines or Garth Brooks is playing at the stadium tonight. I have a feeling that this is probably a game that a lot of people did not view and will just be reading about. And that's unfortunate, because the Vols played exceptionally well, and that's what led me to come here this evening and speak about it to you. Very interesting game. Washington, on paper, had the size that one would think would give Tennessee's current lineup fits. They had the #1 recruiting class in the country last year. They've got a freshman forward who's amazing, a guard, just loads and loads of talent. So on paper, you would think that they would have given the Vols trouble, but they really didn't. The Vols trailed all of 26 seconds in this game. They got out early. Now, Washington is coached by Jim Boeheim disciples, so naturally they were running that Syracuse 2-3 zone. But the Vols picked it apart. Lots and lots of shots from the elbow that just went down. Incredible. Incredible. They made Washington look bad, and Washington is not bad. Now, in the second half, Washington came out with a little more spirit, but they never really threatened the Vols at all. It is a little concerning that 72 of the 75 points the Vols scored came from the starters. As I've said in previous videos, I don't know that you can play those 5 guys all those minutes and it be sustainable for the entire season. But let's go through the lineup and see what we had. Starts with Lamonte Turner. He had an okay game. I think something's still bothering his shot. But his assists were there. He ran the offense. He did well. Had 8 assists, coming off a game where he had 14. And he's actually scored a few points. He really sort of iced the thing at the end where some missed free throws could have maybe cracked the door open for Washington a little bit. Then you go on to Jordan Bowden. 18 points. He did his job. There was a series in the first half where Jordy was just unstoppable. Burying big shot after big shot. Really good game from Jordy, but he's going to be the engine that runs this whole thing from a scoring perspective. Move on to Josiah Jordan James, Triple J. He posted a very respectable 9-4-5 line tonight. 9 points, 4 boards, 5 assists. It was interesting to see he actually ran the point most of the time when Lamonte was not. That was good to see because that's what Triple J is supposed to do. He's a distributor. He was a 5-star recruit, and people have been on him a little bit because he hasn't really performed in all of 3 games to this point, like people somehow expected a 5-star to perform. But you look across the bench tonight at Washington, and you will see 3 more 5-stars who perhaps didn't perform quite like you would expect 5-stars to perform. It's very early in the year. James, he missed a lot of the preseason with a groin injury. I think he's going to be just fine. Moving on to the revelation of the year, Yves Pons. Another 15 points tonight. And it was how he did it. They weren't all threes tonight. They weren't all dunks. I've been nervous about Yves Pons because, frankly, last year at this time, he worked his way into the starting lineup. He was burying threes. He was dunking. He was playing defense at a high level. But once we got into SEC play, he just kind of disappeared. He was still a solid defender and rebounder, but there was no scoring from Yves Pons. This year, it doesn't seem to be fool's gold. His shot has improved immensely. He's shooting it from all over the floor. Threes, he had a very, very pretty baseline jumper tonight. He was one of the guys that was lethal at the elbow when Tennessee went on their run. Just really, really well. Had an amazing block right at the rim. Still defending at a high level. No one could replace Admiral Schofield. No one could. But Yves Pons is doing a good job of replacing a lot of that production. The revelation of the year so far. And finally, John Fulkerson. John Fulkerson drew a tough assignment, banging down low. He made a very savvy veteran play, getting the second foul on Washington's big man that sent him to the bench in the first half, which really precipitated Tennessee's run into the lead. Very heady play. He still scored in double digits. He still had 6 or 8 rebounds, I think. He did his job too. But really, the only production that we got off the bench was Olivier Camois. He scored 3 points, but I was really impressed with how he defended Washington's big man while he's in there. A lot of times he was doing it on his own, but he was game. He was up for the challenge. So this was a good win for Tennessee because I think this Washington team is only going to get better. In fact, this is a team that I think Tennessee would much rather play in November than they would in February because a lot of this youth, once it gets some experience on that team, they're going to be just fine. I would consider them probably the favorites to win the Pac-10. So any way you slice it, this is a good win for Tennessee. And I didn't see it coming. I was resigned to our fate. I looked at what we lost last year with Grant, with Admiral, with Kyle, with Jordan Bone. I said, there's no way. And I looked to the future too. We've talked about this a little bit. I looked at this recruiting class that we just signed this week. According to some services, 3 5-stars, others 2 5-stars, and a 4-star. Any way you slice it, on paper, the best recruiting class the University of Tennessee has ever signed. So this team, the current team, was kind of lost in the shovel. They're not last year's team that won 31 games. They're not next year's team with all the superlatives. So I was prepared to, have a good time watching these guys develop. Being a bubble NCAA team, that sort of thing. But that's over now. You can't beat number 20 with the number 1 recruiting class in the country on a neutral site by 12 in very, very business-like fashion and not raise the expectations. So here we go again. It's going to be a wild ride with Rick's Volunteers this year. Next up, we've got Alabama State coming into the friendly confines of Thompson Bowling Arena. But the next one that you should really circle on your calendars, because we've got Alabama State, we've got Chattanooga. Those are fine teams. Tennessee should be prohibitively favored in both of those games and should win both those games easily at home. Tennessee has won 28 in a row at home. It's going to take a very good team to break that streak. It'll probably happen this year, sometime in the SEC schedule, but not soon. But the next game you really ought to be circling on your calendars are one of those preseason tournaments. We'll play Florida State on November 29th, and then the next night we'll either play VCU or have a revenge game against Purdue from the NCAA tournament last year. It's it's going to be interesting to watch. But this team isn't going to sneak up on anyone any longer. There's no more griping about what we lost. It's time to look at what we've got. And what we've got is a better basketball team than I would have thought had you asked me at halftime of the Murray State game. This team has now put together 3 very, very solid halves of basketball. And, you know, we were picked 4th or 5th or 6th, I think, in the SEC. That seems low all of a sudden. Still early, lot could happen, but it's going to be a fun ride, and I hope you'll take it with me. Next up, we'll be previewing the football game against Missouri as we go into next week. They're an interesting team. I watched some of them today playing Florida, and Missouri's defense looked pretty solid most of the game. Their offense looked completely lost. Another thing that's hanging out with them is the NCAA still has to rule on their postseason fate. But we'll talk more about that in the next video. Thank you one and all. Go Vols.